Hello, everyone, and welcome to First Gen Gamers. And it is the concluding episode of our trilogy of
Hopefully.
hopefully. Oh, introductions. I'm Jed. He's Mike. Welcome to the show. If you've been listening for the past couple of weeks, you've been hearing us go through generation by generation, painstakingly, what we're thankful for in the history of gaming. We are currently up to the sixth generation, the last of it, the Big Mac Daddy console of the sixth generation, the PlayStation 2.
That is right. Yeah, no, the fifth and the sixth gen, apparently there was a lot we were thankful for sure.
I don't think the list is going to get any shorter with the other two gens left on the list too.
Oh no. Okay, well we'll try to speed through and do the best we can. I really do want to conclude this as a trilogy as well.
Yep.
Because we got so many other things we need to move on to and talk about. So
Absolutely.
But you know what? I'm going to take it as a positive that we are so grateful that we just couldn't stop talking about the things that we love about gaming. I think that's a really positive sign.
Yeah.
And tells us that we're in the right place doing the right thing.
Exactly. Because you go on to even the most industry polishing websites, IGN, there's still a lot of negative journalism that you will find. Not that we won't ever touch on topics that veer a little bit, a little more scolding or a little more negative, but we're trying to be positive right now. We're trying to have some fun, go through our history and have some fun. And it, like you said, it's a good thing. It's looking back on some of the memories has brought a smile to my soul.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, with that said, PS2, we ran through the list of games last week, but, let's go ahead and pick out a few and talk about them. So any memories jumping out at you like right away that you want to talk about?
Absolutely. Okay. So one game that I didn't even mention in my countdown last week, and I'm so amazed that I forgot it. I'm embarrassed that I forgot it because it's one of my favorite franchises of all time. It had 3 games on the PlayStation 2. 2 of them are good. One of them's eh. And that would be the Legacy of Kain series.
Oh yeah.
Blood Omen 2 was fine. But Soul Reaver 2 and Defiance. I just have so many memories connected to that whole franchise in and of itself. The Shakespearean melodramatic, but in a fun way dialogue, the convoluted but amazing plot, the atmosphere of the game. It's gothic but futuristic but medieval all at the same time. I played Soul Reaver 2 and Defiance. I got those shortly after I moved to Michigan and was with my wife. We were fiancés at the time, and a big memory of playing those two is tied to her watching me play them. And if I would get stumped with a puzzle, she'd be like, "No, just rotate the mirror," or "Yeah, the thing you need to do is over there in that corner." And that's how I think I mentioned playing with because this is when I've met her, so we haven't. This generation and the next generation, there was a lot of passive couch co-op, you could say, of the wife watching me play and being kind of the navigator.
I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's good bonding time.
Yeah. Couple other memories tied to her in gaming as well. Grand Theft Auto 3. She played it. She didn't finish a single mission. She didn't even start a single mission. The only thing she did in that game is there is a starting area very close, or there's a city park very close to the starting area. It's a really small area. It's got this arch kind of in it, kind of like the Arc de Triomphe, but much smaller in scale, obviously. And for some reason, she became fascinated with camping in a location, using the cheat codes to turn on all the weapons, and then just going on a killing spree.
Rampage.
Yeah, just absolute rampage. She called it the Alley of Death, even though it wasn't an alley. And
I get it.
all she would do for 10 minutes is just kill every pedestrian that passed by. And there was something charming about watching this. She comes from a very Americana background, just the mom and dad together, the two kids, the white picket fence, the small town America, very sweet, very, I don't want to say innocent, but she was just she's very pure, true North, lawful good.
Yeah. She had a classic, calm, steady, stable upbringing.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
My wife's pretty much the same way.
Yeah. So to watch her be most of the time lawful good, and then she would turn on Grand Theft Auto 3 and she'd become chaotic evil.
Just go straight goblin mode.
Yeah. Absolutely. It was like, who are you? Who am I marrying? But it's kind of hot.
Yeah, no. I think it's great. When you find somebody that doesn't mind going goblin mode every once in a while, I think you found something special.
Yeah. And the other gaming memory tied to her from PlayStation 2 is from Monster Rancher 3. It is a very obscure. I know I talked Monster Rancher in the prior game or in the prior episode. Monster Rancher 3 took a little bit different tactic. It still used the disc swapping thing to generate monsters, but instead of being able to crossbreed your monsters, what would happen is that you could only have one monster in inventory at a time. You couldn't freeze them and hold on to them. You would run that monster, then it would die, and then you would feed the heart of that monster to the new monster, and it would imbue it with the previous monster's essence and possibly crossbreed it. It's kind of gruesome. And now you've been married quite a while. And anyone who else has been married or even just with someone for a long time, you develop inside jokes.
For sure. Yeah.
And they come from the weirdest, stupidest places. And one of those inside jokes comes from Monster Rancher 3. There was I couldn't even tell you what the dialogue scene was, but there's a shot where, the dialogue box pops up and there's a little picture of the person. It's your training assistant. And she's reacting to whatever you've said or what someone else has said. And it's spelled out, it's onomatopoeia. So it's, like yelp or bark or whatever would be, except for this is MNNNGH.
Okay.
Mung. I don't know what the fuck mung is. I've never seen mung anywhere. And for some reason, we're playing it. My wife saw it. She was like, what the hell is mung? I'm like, I don't know. Mung became that inside joke to us. So it's just kind of, we assume it's kind of a moment of surprise of angry surprise. Like you're angry, but you don't know how to express it. So it's just mung.
That's good. Yeah, Japanese onomatopoeia. I think it's interesting that onomatopoeia changes so drastically depending on your language of origin. And so then when you try to localize that onomatopoeia, weird shit happens, right?
Oh yeah. It translates, but it doesn't translate. And
I heard, especially if there's voice acting, I don't remember the game, but I remember either watching a Let's Play or playing probably an NIS America game or something. And the lady character, she was mad. So she goes, Murgurger. And I'm like, what is that? What is Murgurger? And she would say that whenever she got mad. And I think it was written out to just be like, but she literally tried to pronounce it. And it was I think that's a really fun way to express your anger. Murgurger.
Sometimes those mistranslations are better than accurate translations.
Well, that reminds me of a story of shared language that I had with my best friend playing Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. So for those who are uninitiated, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance on PS2 was a kind of isometric top-down dungeon crawler, probably one of the best on the system, maybe one of the best of all time, to be honest. But then again, I didn't play a whole lot of the PC versions. I'm sure those will rock it. But for what it was, having that couch co-op experience with a friend was really great. And there's usually a voice line that plays when one of the characters dies by the other character. And my best friend, he would always play the elven sorceress, and I would always play the dwarven warrior, right? And the sorceress, unfortunately, not as beefy as a bit of a glass cannon. So he got, bodied a few more times than I did. And we got used to hearing the dwarven character say, "I'll avenge you." But the dwarf is, of course, like coded Scottish. So he's like, "I'll avenge ye." And we developed this meta narrative because it sounds like he's saying, "I love Angie." So basically they're in a relationship and then she's dying in his arms. And instead of saying, I'll always love you, he like admits to her that he actually loves her friend. "I love Angie."
Oh.
And then and then she dies. And then like, of course you awkwardly bring her back. And then she's like, "What the hell, man?" But that became like a thing whenever we were playing games and we were co-oping and somebody died, the other person would be like, "Oh, I love Angie." And that was like our inside, joke for, picking on somebody when they perished, basically.
Nice. I love those kind of memories.
Oh, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Hey, shout out to the listeners. If you guys have shared language from playing games, email us and let us know. We want to hear those stories. Those are fun stories.
Absolutely. Those kind of stories are just it's part of what makes gaming fun is that way of bonding over something that is completely ridiculous.
For sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say 2 other games that I wanted to mention memories of.
Yeah.
I mean, because I could go on and on. There's dozens on this console alone, but I think the 2 other prominent ones. One is Metal Gear Solid 3.
Yes.
Not to discount Metal Gear Solid 2, because that one is just that is crazier than a bag of kittens in a river.
It's wild.
Yeah. That everything that I said about Legacy of Kain being a convoluted series, Metal Gear Solid 2 stuffs it into one game.
It makes Legacy of Kain look like a Barney episode.
Yes, absolutely. I remember seeing the true ending where the Patriots have been dead for 100 years. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, they're AI,
now
primordial.
Like, where are we going from there?
Yeah.
But Metal Gear Solid 3 was such a left turn. Taking it back to the 60s and bringing it down, reducing the technology, no AI, no digital camo, none of the wild shit that was in Metal Gear Solid 2. But what stands out to me for that one is that is the first game ever that made me cry. Because of the ending.
The relationship between Big Boss and the boss. So Big Boss being the person you play as, basically the Solid Snake analog, right? Because he looks just like Solid Snake, which makes sense because Solid Snake is a clone of his. Again, the plot's convoluted.
Yep.
But yeah, the boss being kind of like this matronly, motherly figure, but also kind of their emotion, their relationship seemed to transcend the buckets or categories that we like to divide relationships up in. And it was one of the first instances where I realized that love doesn't really need to be divided into a bucket or be placed into a box. Like, this is your lover, this is your sister, this is your mother, this is your friend. There was something about their relationship that kind of transcended that. You know what I mean? It was just like a pure bond.
Yes.
And to see what she had to do and then what he had to do. Yeah, I completely agree. The amount of respect and love between the two of them is a tragedy, the way things played out.
Yes. And you could see how that ending, how he does, he gets what she did. He gets that she did it out of orders. But he doesn't understand it. And he doesn't understand that he doesn't it's not that he doesn't comprehend it and understand the details of it, but it just doesn't make sense to him. And that a world in which she had been a hero, in a world where she had been someone that the nation revered and needed, and then to be not only discarded into history, but buried. And it embitters him. It poisons whatever patriotism and sense of duty he had left. That ending sets up the entire franchise. Everything that happens forward from Metal Gear Solid 3 can be traced back to that ending and what happened. And that's just it's such a well-written moment that the first time I saw it, it got to me so hard.
And it landed at a great time too, because you could say that nowadays it's in vogue to challenge your leaders, not trust government, to be disillusioned with just how corrupt things are and just how not working for you the powers that be are. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the lie that is patriotism and the propaganda that goes along with it. But at the time that game hit, I think a lot of people, they were raised by boomers. They grew up, hating communism. They grew up like loving your country no matter what and being really uncritical of America. So I don't know, because obviously it's a Japanese game. They have their own issue with nationalism and their history being in the Axis, but I feel like they really kind of nailed the disillusionment that a lot of Americans go through, I think, when it comes to being in the service, yes. Right? And what that actually means, and then how you're taken care of afterwards, and how you see that you're manipulated and used as pawns and cast aside. That scene where, he's supposed to shake hands with the president and Secretary of State and everybody else, and just kind of like he just stops. He can't do it anymore. He walks out. Mm-hmm. Like, it's almost as powerful to me as the final scene in First Blood, which made me cry.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yes.
It was wild.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very powerful. Because I am not a soldier and I have not been in that world, but I do understand just from, being socialized masculine in the 80s, being socialized as a man, I understand the sense of duty, the sense of honor that goes along with serving your country and the expectation that goes along with that. And then to understand just how devalued you are and how manipulated you are, and like coming out of that, it's got to be devastating, And
to go along with what you were saying too, not only did it come out at a time for people who had grown up with the baby boomers or under the baby boomers and such, it also came out only 2-3 years after 9/11.
Yeah.
So
right.
Patriotism was high. Don't question the president. I mean, remember what happened to the Dixie Chicks when they dared question the president?
I do.
They nuked their own career because of it. So for this game to come out and to say patriotism has a cost and, you may love your country may not love you back.
Yeah. It may not be worth paying that cost. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
powerful stuff.
Absolutely. So, to move away from something heavy like that, the last game that I'd like to talk about, this was the tease that I dropped at the end of last episode.
Oh yeah. Okay.
My favorite game of all time, and this is going to be a curveball, is a game called Rez.
I remember you talking about Rez on our show. Yes.
So for those who haven't played Rez, it's a rail shooter taking place in the third-person perspective. The plot is not incredibly deep. You are a hacker. It's way in the future. World is run by a central computer. The central computer's gone haywire. You are tasked with hacking through the multiple layers of defenses and destroying all the viruses and curing the mother brain. It's not called mother brain, but that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
What makes Rez so unique is the concept came from the neurological condition called synesthesia, which is when the brain's mapping of the senses are cross-wired. People with synesthesia, they will hear music and they will experience
see colors.
They will not only experience the aural sensation of hearing it, they will experience another sensation, like they'll Nirvana, they'll listen to Nirvana and it tastes like fish, or they'll listen to TLC and they see the colored blue. Same thing with tastes, or names or words can be associated with colors, things like that. So the game is built around a form of that, in that the actions that you take in the game change the visuals of the game. They bring the background, they add background elements. Though when you shoot an enemy down, it adds beats to the music. And the music and the beats that are added to it through your actions are then transferred into the force feedback into the controller. So you've got this audio, visual, textile loop of all three interacting and reacting with and to each other. It's not a deep game. Like I said, it's a rail shooter, but I love the concept so much, and I love the different ways that you can play it. Like you can shoot down to, a wave of 4 enemies will come, and you can shoot down each one individually, and it will give you that tink, 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 tink. Or you can link them, and it will automatically go tink, 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 and it will change the beat, and it will change the force feedback. Something about all the way that all of those things combine is just, to me, it makes for a simple, magical game that I can go back and play again and again and again. I had it on PlayStation 2. I bought the remaster for it on PlayStation 4. I've platinumed it, which took for freaking ever. I know it's an odd pick. It's not a deep story. It's not a deep game, but it is, for some reason, it's just the game that whenever I think of video games, that's the first game that comes to mind for me.
I get it. In a way, it's kind of a pure video game because, you talk about how video games as a medium can help you experience something that can't really be matched by music, books, or movies, because there's an interactive element. But that's really taking that and dialing it up to 11, because that interactive element crosses, like you said, so many sensory inputs. And it's an experience whereas the story of Metal Gear can sort of be replicated in a movie, right? And there are other video game elements that can be done and still presented and get the point across in different mediums. This is one of those examples that you really can only do it with a video game. Mm-hmm. And it's such a special, unique experience that people, whether like video games or not, should check out.
Absolutely. And if you haven't checked it out, especially the remaster, the original is beautiful as well, but the remaster glosses it up so much. There's a VR mode, so you could play it on PSVR. I'm sure that it's out on Steam as well. It is so worth it. It's just pure game, like you said.
Yeah, straight up. All right. Well, we are 23 minutes in, so I'm going to try to be brief because I had a lot of games to talk about too. I'll talk about getting a PS2 because I think that's a fun memory. I'm in the mall with my mom. I'm trying to remember when PS2 came out. I'm probably 18, maybe 17. I don't know.
Late 2000, I believe. Right before Christmas 2000, if I remember correctly.
Okay, then yeah, I would have been 18, just turned 18, still in school. And my mom turns to me because we're in the KB Toys, and PlayStation 2 had just come out, so obviously it was just running off the shelf. Like you couldn't get one. KB Toys had one, but you had to pay $500 because it came with 3 games. It was a package deal.
Okay,
you couldn't get it for less. It was the PS2 plus 3 games. You get to choose which 3 games you want. And my mom looks at me because she sees I want it. And she's like, okay, you can get this or you can get a car. And I was like, okay. And I thought about it and I was like, well, I already have a girlfriend and a bus pass. And I go to school in Broad Ripple, which for those who don't know about, the local Indianapolis area, that is a kind of hot spot of hangouts. So like there's all this stuff I can do after school. I don't have to really drive anywhere. So I was like, you know what? I want a PlayStation 2, like a real gamer would.
Priorities. Love it.
Right? So I got that with Tekken Tag Tournament, Dynasty Warriors 2, and SSX, the snowboarding game. Dynasty Warriors 2 in particular, I had a lot of fun with the other 2 games, don't get me wrong, but Dynasty Warriors 2 launched my decades-long and still current love affair with Muso games, which is a style of game that basically Omega Force and then eventually Koei Tecmo coined, where it's just waves and waves of enemies. And it's kind of mindless button mashing, but they do introduce RPG elements and more complications as the series went on. but just mowing down all those enemies on screen. For me, I was already a big fan of beat 'em ups, but to me, a Musou was like the ultimate beat 'em up. You know what I mean? But like in 3D. Mm-hmm. And so I always love the fact that I made that decision, and I've never looked back and thought it was the wrong one, specifically because of how amazing the PS2 was from that point forward, all the cool games that I got to play, and specifically because I love Dynasty Warriors so much, and then all of its iterations and spin-offs and things of that nature. I think I talked about God of War before, so I'm not going to mention that again. I mean, it's amazing. What is there to say? I talked about how I followed Kingdom Hearts. Silent Hill is scary as shit. I talked about Dark Alliance already. Time Crisis 2. I got a gun con for the PS2, and I love like gun shooter games, so that was really cool. Shadow of Colossus, Bully, Ratchet and Clank, Guitar Hero. God, there are so many memories. There's so many memories. I remember playing Guitar Hero and being really good at it and being able to look away from the screen and still play the game and impress my friends. And that was like the ultimate party game at the time. And then, of course, it evolved into Rock Band. Ratchet and Clank, like one of the best platforming shooters of all time. One of the few games that would make me bust out laughing out loud. Like it just had like a humor that hit, and it was very silly and fun. The weapons and stuff throughout the series were always wacky and very inventive and beautiful. And the game just really kind of pushed whatever system it was on graphically. And then at Shadow Colossus, I played many iterations of it, but the original Shadow Colossus is a mood. I remember just sitting in the house that I was renting with my best friend and another friend of mine when I was like post-college, playing Shadow of Colossus, like really getting into it, like feeling the somber tones, the exploration, getting to the next Colossus, figuring out how to beat it, taking it down, feeling slightly sad, rinse, repeat.
It might be one of the first games in video games where that started the video game as artwork mentality.
It definitely raised back up that ever-present conversation, because people were trying to compare video games to art for the longest time. And I think separating your bias, you can make a case because art needs to be created in order to create video games. That's what assets are, right? And that's what the vision is. But to create like an artistic art house experience in the way that other kind of audio-visual media like movies can do, you're right. Like once we get into that era, like Ico, Shadow Colossus, and then, moving on to other indie games like Braid, you get this sense of vision and this sense of like trying to elicit certain emotions out of the player. And yeah, I completely agree. Like Shadow Colossus is one of those games that nails it every time. So, for the risk of going on too long, I am going to cut it off there. PS2, amazing system. I could talk about it all day, just like you.
Yep.
But let's get on to the 7th generation. See if we can knock 7 and 8 out in a half hour. I doubt it, but if we need to go long on this episode, we'll go long.
That's what we're here for. That's what we do for you. Talk about video games for way too long.
Way too long. Way too long. We hope you listen for way too long. All right. So 7th generation, we got the PS3, Xbox 360, the Nintendo Wii, and I did throw the Nintendo DS on there because, again, I had a couple games I wanted to discuss. So let me get that out of the way real quick.
Okay.
To me, the definitive Tetris up until recently with, what's that version of Tetris Tetris Connect? What was it called?
The one that's on, Tetris,
all the modern systems.
Tetris Effect.
Tetris Effect. Thank you. That I could say could make a case for the best Tetris game of all time, because again, it's kind of got a res vibe to it. The audio visual and how it, the music changes depending on how you're doing. But up until that point, definitively, without a doubt, I would always say the best Tetris game ever was Tetris DS. For those who haven't experienced it, you should seek it out. Tetris DS not only has your classic Tetris, but it has so many other game modes that are actually kind of interwoven with different popular Nintendo franchises. And the different ways that you can play Tetris themed after like Metroid or Legend of Zelda or Mario, like some versions of Tetris where you can actually go through those older games depending on how far you get in the Tetris game. So you get to watch that play out. Adventure style, or the 3D Tetris blob that you turn and add pieces to, kind of like a big ball of foil. Like, I don't know. Like, there's the puzzle one where you kind of have to put a certain number of pieces in order to clear all the lines. Like, they had all these different versions and modes of Tetris in one game. They really packed Tetris DS with as much content as possible. And it's so fun and so unique, and nothing like it has been done since, to my knowledge, that I really think that people should check it out, especially if they're fans of Tetris. And then I want to highlight Retro Game Challenge. Have you heard of this game?
No.
You would love it. I think you would love it. Let me explain it. So Retro Game Challenge is a little bit of an obscure Nintendo DS game. I think you can find it used for around 30 or 40 bucks, but if you don't mind having just the cartridge. The concept is that there's this game master guy who's like obsessed with retro games, right? And he's mad that other people only want to play modern games. And eventually, like, his psychosis turns him into like this game master where he's sucked into the gaming world and he has these gaming powers. And what he does is he takes you, the player, he transports you back in time to 1980s Japan where he lived and grew up. So you go to his house and meet Child Him. And Child Him is obnoxious, but he's a good kid, right? And he gets all the new Famicom games. And he sees that future him is challenging you, like, you'll be stuck here forever unless you do my game challenges. And he's like, oh, that sucks, man. I'll do what I can to help you. And they make their own versions of retro games, up to and including like a retro style like Shinobi, a retro style Flicky, but with ninjas, a retro style like RC8, like RCM Racer top down game. Mm-hmm. There's a retro style Dragon Quest game. Like, so they cover RPG, racing, action, all that. And the game releases come out in sequence. And the cool thing is that you'll have challenges, like say you're playing like a Galaga type shooter and you have to get like 20,000 points, or you have to find a warp to get to the next level, right? Mm-hmm. And just like the older games, actually in the 80s, there's all these secrets and codes. But your boy has a subscription to a gaming magazine. So they made their own gaming magazine complete with reviews, walkthroughs, tips, tricks, codes. And on the bottom of the DS screen, it's you and the other kid in front of a TV on the floor playing, and on the top is the actual game. And you get this full experience of going and reading about the game in your magazine, and then going and trying to do the challenge, and then like getting challenged again and reading the next magazine and finding out what new games are going to come out and more tips and tricks. And then when you beat all the challenges, you unlock free play mode, and there's a challenge to actually beat all the games if you want. But the vibe that this game establishes, being able to kind of go back in time to being a kid and reading about your games in your magazine and playing them with a friend next to you who's cheering you on audibly, like, yeah, go, that type of thing. It's so amazing. The game is a little shorter than I would like. I would have liked to see it really kind of go further and expand on this idea, but there's been no other game like it. And for people who are really into retro gaming, or people our age who grew up in the 80s playing games, it's such a nostalgia trip. It really is.
It sounds like it. That does sound like my kind of game.
Yeah, no, I think you would dig it. I really do. So if you have a way to emulate, or you want to go out and try to track down a copy, I would highly recommend it. What's your major console for 7th gen? PS3, right?
Actually, we had both the PS3 and the Wii.
Okay.
Got the Wii first, then a couple years later got the PS3.
All right. Well, let's go for Wii next.
Okay.
What do you have any memories associated with Wii?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see. First of all, as far as I'm concerned, the best 3D Mario, Super Mario Galaxy.
Okay.
I can, just saying the phrase Super Mario Galaxy, I can hear that title screen music. Some of the most gorgeous visuals in a Mario 3D game, the most gorgeous music. Just, for me, it was the first time since Mario World, maybe even Mario 3, where the idea of the Mario game was just this sense of scope and wonder. I say that knowing that Mario 64 was the first Mario 3D game. I didn't play that until much, much later. So, right. Sorry, Mario 64 fans. But Mario Galaxy is my 3D Mario.
Nice.
Rock Band, like you were mentioning with Guitar Hero, played a lot of Rock Band. Probably have a good 70 extra DLC songs
Oh yeah.
stored on the SD card. Made an attempt one New Year's Eve with a couple of friends over. We made an attempt at the ultimate set list.
Wow.
Too many people started falling asleep. We think we got to the 81st, 82nd song.
Isn't that like 5 hours long? I can't remember because we tried it too. I don't know if we ever got to the end of it, but isn't it like hours and hours long?
It's like 7 or 8 hours long, I think.
Jesus.
And
wow.
And you can't stop. No,
you have to keep going. It's
Yeah.
just like one song after the other. Yeah.
We made the smart decision to at least rotate instruments so that way no one was getting tired of doing the same thing. But even still, I mean, there's only so much Mountain Dew you can drink to keep yourself up before you're like, wow, it's 4 a.m. and now I have to sing Judas Priest's Painkiller.
This is the Painkiller. That's so fun, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I tricked my friends into playing. They didn't know what they were playing, and I was singing because I wanted to watch them struggle. And like, it's just, and they're like, what are you doing to us? This song is so difficult.
You know, the song that gave, at least my wife's favorite instrument was the drums.
Yeah.
The song that gave her the fits the most was Cherub Rock by the Smashing Pumpkins.
I could see that.
Because it's such, the Jimmy Chamberlain, the drummer for the Pumpkins, is such an unusual drummer. I mean, he's more jazz style than anything. So the drum lines are so weird. And she just could not keep time. And she was in marching band. So she knows all about, keeping time.
Yeah, she's got rhythm.
Yeah, she's absolutely got rhythm. And yet that song, she was just like, I fucking hate this song. I can't wait till the song's over. So many small indie games on there as well. Things like Fluidity and Yet It Moves. The Bit Trip series. I love the Bit Trip series. The DuckTales remake might have been on there.
Might have been.
Yeah, I think I've got it on PlayStation 3 now that I think about it, so I may be wrong. Anyway, and of course Wii Sports. First time I remember playing Wii, a couple friends got the Wii before we did. They brought it over. We played Wii Sports for about 4 hours. And it was brand new, so we just assumed that you had to do the full motion.
I remember you talking about that. Yeah.
And
getting tennis elbow.
Yeah. Not being able to lift our arms for the next day or two.
That's funny.
But it was fun.
It's a good workout.
Yeah. And of course, the Virtual Console.
Yeah.
That might be even though there are now other ways to play retro games. I mean, emulators already existed, but computers have come so far to be able to emulate damn near everything. Like,
at the time, it really was one of the optimal ways to do it if you wanted to pay, for sure.
Yeah.
And you didn't have like a high-end PC.
Yeah.
I agree.
It was just convenient to be able to go, oh, look, they've got Donkey Kong Country. They've got Neo Geo games. They've got... And there were so many. That was the first time I experienced the TurboGrafx 16. That was the first time I experienced some N64 games, Neo Geo games. There were certain games on there, games that will come up in future topics. I'm positive from all of these systems, and games that I just missed from systems that I had. It was such a fun way to rediscover history, and I'm still kind of pissed that Nintendo decided to go with the Nintendo Switch Online mode instead of the Virtual Console. But
yeah, I mean, they kind of drip feeded the Virtual Console too, if you think about it, though. So the only difference is you can't really pick and choose. They just kind of release the games for you.
Yeah,
I'm of two minds about it because nowadays it is so easy to emulate things. So it's convenient to be able to hop on my Switch and play certain games, especially when they do those little hacks that they do. But at the same time, yeah, I totally get the sentiment.
All right. So how about you for the Wii? What have you got?
I was a late adopter to the Wii, so I didn't play it in its hey. There's a lot of games I really love on the Wii, and there's some good memories too. Like we played Wii Sports Resort a lot because I really loved the sword fighting and the archery. I was so good at the archery. It feels good to nail a bullseye in that. You know what I mean?
It does.
And just the use of the kind of higher accuracy motion plus sensor in the Wii. You know what I mean? To be able to do the sword fighting and utilizing the nunchuck and stuff for the bow and arrow stuff. It was really, really, really fun. Like, I enjoyed that so much. And I enjoyed doing Wii Fit because Wii Fit would incorporate a lot of Wii Sports Resort stuff into it, depending on the types of mini games that you would play. Like, you could jog around the resort, stuff like that, which is really neat. My friend and I played House of the Dead Overkill, and we beat it on the Wii. House of the Dead Overkill is one of the raunchiest, nastiest, grindhouse style games I have ever played. And we played it on the little old baby kid-friendly Wii. I mean, there's literally, I guessed it too, which I guess makes me sick in the head, but there's literally a part where the main bad guy's mom turns into a giant zombie monster that you have to kill. And I don't know if I'm ruining this. It's an older game, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. At one point, he's like, "Mother!" And he like reaches out his arms, and she's like laying on her back. And I was like, he's not going to do what I think he's about to do. He literally crawls back inside of her womb. If you could see Jet's face right now.
I did not expect that.
Dude, House of the Dead Overkill is fucking gnarly. Okay. Oh my God. And I'm not a big fan of stereotypes, although sometimes something's so ridiculous you have to laugh. One of the characters is black, and he is such a 70s Black Dynamite exploitation style character. Every other word out of his mouth is motherfucker. Like, it's so good. It's terrible. It's so good. And my friend and I had such a fun time like playing through that.
I feel like when there weren't a whole lot of M-rated games on the Wii, but I feel like when there were M-rated games,
they went in.
The people who made them were like, "Oh no, this dial's going to 11." Like,
yeah, that was certainly the case for Overkill.
Yeah, Mad World, No More Heroes. It was just like, turn up the volume, make this the most raunchy, vile thing.
Yeah, no More Heroes, especially No More Heroes 2. I think in the beginning of that game, there's some wild shit that goes down that I recall. But yeah, so those are pretty much the kind of Wii memories that stick out to me. And then, of course, like you said, going to friends' houses and playing Wii Sports, always a good time. I love the Wii, and I'm grateful to the Wii for how ubiquitous it made gaming to the currently non-gamers.
Yep.
I'm not saying that gaming landscape would not be the same without it today. But I wonder, because there's a lot of little old ladies that play games now, and they play hard. Like, there's this YouTube channel I follow called Food for Dogs. And it's this little old lady who is in love with Japanese RPGs. She is awesome. Like, she puts my collection to shame. And I love like watching her talk about like Persona and shit. And, there's a lot of like really cute, young like girls who, when we were young, would not touch games. And now like they're obsessed with them. There's a lot of, older women streamers. Like, there's a lot of different demographics that weren't targeted that I lamented about that now are really into games. And I kind of wonder if the diversity and the, approachableness, if that's a word, of the Wii didn't contribute to that,
I would agree with that. Yeah, it's definitely the system that, I remember my mother-in-law or my in-laws coming over, and they had heard of it. They're like, "Well, what's this Wii? Can we try it?" And, we played Wii Sports with them, and seeing my mother-in-law attempting to swing a baseball bat or golf or whatever. I want to say there was a couple of other casual games that she tried. I think something on Wii Play maybe, but yeah, it was literally a game system that anybody on Earth could pick up, and
it brought people together. Yeah, it's very successful. All right, let's do PS3 next.
PS3. So interesting. Both of these systems I got as gifts.
Okay.
From my wife. She surprised me completely with the Wii. Just out of the blue, she bought it. She found one day at a Walmart, and she got it.
Cool.
The PS3, she did her best to hide it. I remember that she got it for me for Christmas, and it was like 2008, I think. About a month beforehand, she goes, "So if you were to get a PlayStation 3, what game," and it came with a game, "what game would you want with it?" I'm like, what kind of fucking question is that? I'm like, I don't know. Depends on what games are available. Well, say it was this or this or this. And she gave me like 3 options, and one of them was Castlevania Lords of Shadow. I'm like, oh, the Castlevania game. Absolutely the Castlevania game.
Sure.
that happened to be my Christmas present, was the PlayStation 3 and Castlevania Lords of Shadow.
Dope.
So that is my starting memory of it. So thank you, dear, for both of those. Controversial opinion, I loved Lords of Shadow. I thought it was a great reboot of Castlevania. I know that a lot of people are like, it's a God of War clone. Yeah, but it's a good one.
If you're going to copy a game, copy a decent game. Ghost Rider was like that. I was very surprised by how good Ghost Rider was. Totally copied God of War.
Yeah. I don't need a game to be original. I just need it to be well done.
Yeah.
So PlayStation 3, I mean, I could mention God of War 3, but I mean, what more can we say about God of War that we haven't already said?
Right.
Diablo 3, I have bought that, I think, on every PlayStation system that has come out. I've rebought it. So I haven't rebought it on 5. I just imported my game from 4.
It's so fucking cool on Switch because Switch has the little goblet, the treasure goblet amiibo, which can take you to Treasure Town anytime you want.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's like this special treasure dungeon that you get to go to once a day using the amiibo. And it doesn't make the game easy, but it's such a leg up as far as like getting kitted out. You know what I mean? When you want to start a new run. I love it. I love it.
So Diablo 3 is one of the few games I've platinumed.
Okay.
And just so you know, listeners, and you, Mike, to platinum it, one of the requirements is you have to get 6 different characters to Paragon level.
Wow.
That's a lot of fucking grinding.
That is. It speaks to how fun the game is, though, that you were willing to do that.
237 hours I've clocked on that game so far.
That is Skyrim levels of amount of gameplay. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And I still play it. Every now and then I'll be like, I'm bored. What do I do? Oh, Diablo. I'd say there's so many games that I could list off on this. Tokyo Jungle, like I said, God of War.
Jungle, so good.
I love Tokyo Jungle.
I love Tokyo Jungle.
That game did not get the appreciation that it deserved. It should have been it should have been more promoted.
Yeah. I mean, for those who don't know what Tokyo Jungle is, imagine post-apocalyptic Earth, specifically Tokyo, where it gets overgrown. There are no humans, but it's animals trying to survive. And you could be anything from like a Pomeranian trying to like grow and fight other Pomeranians and then eventually mate. And then like your babies, like you control them. And like, you're just trying to, it's like an arcade experience almost. You're trying to go as many years as you can down your lineage before you perish. To all the way up to like playing as a dinosaur. Like, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
There's it's split into herbivores and carnivores. There's like
so there's 2 different styles of gameplay, right?
Yeah.
Where you are carnivore, so you have to attack other animals and eat them, or you have to avoid them, right? And they're both gameplay styles are equally as fun, even if it doesn't sound like it. It's really cool.
Yeah, and there's just dozens of different kind of animals, like you said, everything from a Pomeranian or a bunny all the way up to deer and bear and tigers and just all sorts of wild shit. Great game though, and it, like I said, did not get
cool.
Needed way more attention.
Yeah, it did.
Saints Row the Third, my favorite Saints Row game.
Saints Row 2 for me, I think, but yeah.
Saints Row 2, I do love Saints Row 2. I like the humor a little bit more in Saints Row 3, but I can see it. I ain't mad at you for loving.
We talked about this before on my other show, but the Saints Row 2 for me, like we both have kind of like our threshold for the mix of absurdness and down to earthness.
Yep.
And I feel like they hit the perfect balance in like, for me, what hits for me as far as silly and serious, because if you get too silly, if everything's silly, then nothing's silly. Right. But if everything's too serious, and Saints Row 2 came out around the same time as Grand Theft Auto 4, and Grand Theft Auto 4 is a good game. Don't get me wrong. But Grand Theft Auto 4, I felt like really left behind a lot of the goofiness that made the PS2 games a lot of fun and try to go for a more serious, realistic narrative, not only in its narrative, but also its gameplay.
Yeah.
And there was something lost with that Saints Row 2 filled the gap in for.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. GTA 4 was kind of up its own butt with seriousness.
Little bit. And,
Yeah.
and luckily they even out with 5 because 5 is fantastic. But yeah, 4, they were trying to go a different direction. They didn't quite iron it out and they kind of lost their balance that they've maintained, since San Andreas. But yeah.
Yeah. But I would say this generation for me, one of the big things for it was indie games. Like there's so many indie games on this. Not that there's anything wrong with AAA franchises, because I mean there's just dozens and dozens on there that are amazing. But games like Rainbow Moon, which was a wonderful throwback to JRPGs from the 1990s.
For sure.
I mentioned the DuckTales remake earlier. Retrograde. If you haven't played that, Retrograde is this wonderful idea where it's a shmup in reverse combined with a rhythm game. So it takes place at the end when you've already successfully defeated all the bad guys, but beating the bad guys has caused a rift in the space-time continuum, and now you have to go backwards in time and suck up all your bullets and unkill everybody. And you do that with a Guitar Hero style, like with the lanes, like in Guitar Hero for the different strings. It's played out in the same way. So there's like, depending on difficulty, there could be anywhere from 3 to 5 different lanes that you go through, avoiding things and tapping the button to get the bullets or the lasers back.
I think I completely forgot about that game until you mentioned it. Like Memory Unlocked. I remember, I don't know if I played it or played much of it, but I do remember the concept and thinking it was really neat.
Yeah. And it's got a kick-ass techno soundtrack. Like I'm not huge on techno, but
it's gotta though.
Yeah. The soundtrack is just it's so adrenaline. It's like, it's techno on the verge of synthwave. And it's just, it's so pump. It gets you pumping. You strap in, you're like, fuck yeah, let's go.
Woo. Love it.
Yeah. Dead Nation, Super Stardust HD.
Dead Nation's good. Yeah.
There's so many great indie games on the PlayStation 3 and in that generation in general.
7th gen for people who weren't already PC gaming heavy, because obviously you got introduced to indies a little earlier, but for the 7th generation, just having those online stores really opened things up for indies to platform themselves. And you had, I don't know if PS3 did it as much, but I know Xbox 360 really pushed XBLA, Xbox Live Arcade, and and to Microsoft's credit, they don't do everything, I would say, the best in terms of their competitors. But one thing that they have always done well and continue to do well to this day is have a good relationship with indies. They have a great relationship with indies. Sony has been always shaky on that. Nintendo's getting really good, but Xbox has been like pretty consistent. And I got to play, 360 was my main console of this generation. I got to play so many cool indies. So I'll talk about that in a moment for sure.
But yeah, that would, the last thing I would say, this is completely pointless, but it's something that I just kind of like to strut about. I have 3 delisted games on the PlayStation 3. So it's like, I look at the PlayStation or at my PlayStation 3 and go, it could be worth money to someone.
Yeah.
Those being the X-Men arcade game.
Yeah.
The Simpsons arcade game. And NCAA Football 14.
Yeah, I regret greatly not buying those 2 arcade games. I mean, I have versions now, so it's fine. But at the time, I was like, oh, no.
The minute I saw them, I'm like, I'm getting those. That's memories. And I didn't think that the license would run out and then they'd get delisted. So when it happened, I was like, oh, shit. Well, I've still got them. Great.
Yeah, I'm a little bummed about the HD re-releases of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2 being on like the 8th gen systems. But those got delisted. And I don't know if they ever got physical versions. Like I can't find them anywhere. And I really wanted to check those out because they weren't like the best games ever. But Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 was actually pretty good. The original Marvel Ultimate Alliance was really good. The 2, it was all right. But yeah, I would have liked to gone back and check those out, with modern whatever. So, yeah. What are you going to do?
Yep.
I adopted PS3 late, which was cool because I have this really cool limited edition red God of War PS3 Slim. So That's fun. Yeah. And it came with like all the God of War HD re-releases plus God of War 3. So I like in Ascension, I think I had like 4 games it came with, which is really neat. I got PS3 and immediately picked up Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch, which is one of those games that when you get it and you settle in, like it's all you think about and all you do until it's done. It is such a vibe. I love Studio Ghibli films first off anyways. So the fact that like that's the studio they were working with for the art direction and the story was great. And it definitely felt like a Studio Ghibli film, to be honest, with its themes about the mother and the son. But also the fact that it was a level 5 game. Level 5 doesn't get enough love for like how well they craft RPGs. And I think the studios know more, unfortunately. But it made a lot of great games before, it perished. And Ni no Kuni is definitely among those. Metal Gear Solid 4, I had wanted to play that game for so long because 360 was my choice that generation. And I was such a huge Metal Gear fan. That was the one thing I lamented not being able to play when it came out. So when I finally got to play it, as much of a mess as that game is, my goodness, it's still, to me, all the fan service in it, and all the fun parts, especially returning the Shadow Moses. Wow. Like hopefully they can get it, ported to more stuff soon. I'm thinking that, with the Konami re-releasing Metal Gear, that's coming maybe possibly to other systems. Cause right now, as of today, I believe it's still locked to the PS3.
I think it's slated for the Volume 2 collection.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
I want to say that I heard that.
But it was locked for good reason because it definitely was very celebratory of the PS3 and integrated. Like they have a PS3 controller in the cutscenes to control the little robot guy, and they use a lot of the 6-axis and other quirks of the PS3. So I get why that might be a bit of a nightmare to port, but I'm glad that they're attempting it. So Infamous. What a cool game that is. The parkour, the superpowers, the electricity and all that. I remember playing that on a demo and going, I have to have this game. And then one of the games I had a lot of fun with, my friend had a PS3, so I went to his place to play a lot of PS3 games, but I played Heavy Rain at his place. Now, say what you want about David Cage, and I definitely can and will. But when it comes down to like mindless crazy drama, you know what I mean? Like if you don't think about it too hard, like if people enjoy like reality TV shows for the bullshit, Heavy Rain is so ridiculous, but it's so enthralling at the same time, knowing that the choices you make and your success and the button presses and the timed events and everything could dictate whether or not people live or die. And that's permanent. And you just have to keep going on with the story. That made things so tense for me. And you put that on top of a murder mystery. Yes, please. I love detective games. I love murder mysteries. So it was such a unique experience at the time. And obviously, not only has David Cage made a lot of those games, but other people like Supermassive have come along and done it even better. At the time, having that experience and like just literally screaming at the TV and going nuts, like, oh my God, get out of there. All the tense situations that he created, like it's such an experience that, you can't really have unless you had it in that time. And I'm really grateful for having been able to play it in its hey, thanks to my friend. So
it reminds me, that whole genre reminds me a lot of the old Choose Your Own Adventure books that existed when we grew up.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that was this, yes, unless you, I held my finger on the page, I can go back. But that really reminded me of that, where there's a dozen different outcomes, and it just depends on what button you press and whether you press it in a timely manner or not.
Or the decisions you make too, because sometimes it came down to, do I go left or right? Do I say this or do I say that? Yeah.
Yep.
So for sure. All right. I think that brings us to the Xbox 360.
This one's all you, man. I don't have one. I've never had one.
Awesome. We're at an hour too, so I'm going to try to do my best because I really do want to finish this. We have other stuff we need to talk about. The Xbox 360 was my main. I already talked about Saints Row 2. Lost Odyssey is an RPG that any fan of Final Fantasy should experience because, to me, Mistwalker was a studio that Hironobu Sakaguchi created after he left Square, and he's basically the father of Final Fantasy. Even if he didn't directly write the stories in the later entries, he was the executive producer and he had a heavy influence over them. And the vibe of Final Fantasy definitely shifted after 10 when he left. But to me, in my heart, the true Final Fantasy 11 is Lost Odyssey, because that's the game he made right after, and it has that vibe. And speaking of a game that can make you cry, oh my god, it pulls the heartstrings like you wouldn't believe. And the hook of Lost Odyssey that really helps it stand out, other than its story, its graphics, and its combat, is the way that it kind of goes into the backstory of its main character. The main character's name is Kaim, and he's been alive for 1,000 years. He doesn't know why he's immortal, but he is. He's often a mercenary because, obviously, a mercenary that can't die is a pretty valuable asset. So he's fighting on this side or that side. Things can get pretty chaotic, but he always comes out of it alive. And he has amnesia, so his memories are unlocked as he goes through the story and sees things that trigger his memories. And the way that his memories play out are in these beautiful, like, text-based scrolling reading segments that play alongside sound effects, visuals, and music, but you're basically just reading a story about his past. And I believe they got a pretty famous professional writer to write these stories, but I don't remember what their name was. It might have been a Japanese writer, but the stories are so impactful and beautiful and like touching. And I don't know, like I can't really explain it, but like my favorite part about that game was just chewing through those stories and like experiencing them and reading them and thinking about them. And then like thinking about them later. It was so interesting to get me closer to this character, but also just to have like it was like reading small awesome books throughout the game, you know what I mean? Yep. And the stories would only last a couple of minutes, but they were so good. Like they were like it's probably the best collection of short stories I've ever read in my life. Like, and that's
the weirdest place, and the weirdest place to have found them.
Yeah, yes. So, love Lost Odyssey for that. Gears of War, lots of fun playing with friends, lots of fun doing the co-op, lots of fun. I love Angie. Red Dead Redemption, Mass Effect. God, Mass Effect felt like Star Wars to me. Like, it was such a fun RPG. There was such a vibe, especially like, you know, in the Citadel and going through like the seedy underbelly and fighting like the gangs, and then like, you know, jet setting out to different planets and driving around on planets with the Mako. And then like the first time a Thresher Maw pops out of the ground, like these giant alien beasts, and you're like, what the shit is this? And it will kill you if you're not prepared. And then just the ending and how epic it was, and like the ship battles and like what the threat you were up against was so fun. And I just remember just feeling the way I felt the first time I watched Star Wars, and like all that play out and how epic it was. It was such a cool space adventure. And then 2 took all of that and really streamlined it and made it even better. It was like a assemble the squad type game. You know, you go around and you make decisions, and depending on the relationships and bonds you form with your squad and the different squad mates you get, the final suicide mission, you could get everybody through alive, or everybody could die depending on what you did. So again, like Heavy Rain or those choose your own adventures, the decisions you made really mattered and really affected the outcome of the game. And that was such a nice touch and really attached me to the story. So, wow, love that. Elder Scrolls 4 and 5. Braid is one of the indie games I wanted to mention that I really liked. It was one of the first times that I played an indie game that really had an impact on me, because it was like the Save the Princess narrative, but then you find out that the main character was actually stalking the quote unquote princess, and she was being saved by somebody else, not kidnapped. And then so you have to like rethink everything that you did in the game and who you are as a character. And I thought that was a really cool twist. Borderlands was the first time I played that, and I thought it was amazing. Fallout 3, I think I talked about before. Dead Space. Dead Space to me is one of the greatest horror games of all time, just based on sound design alone. The sound design in that game is top notch. It really is. Arkham Asylum, the whole make me feel like the superhero. Like the first time you like extended your bat cape and like flew down from a high point. I was like, no. It's just good stuff. Crackdown. I know that it didn't end well as a series, but originally Crackdown was a lot of fun. It was very arcadey and silly. And the fact that like you would like defeat enemies, and depending on how you defeated them, skill orbs would pop out of their body and absorb into you, and you become like a bigger, stronger soldier. Like you could jump higher, run faster, all that shit. It was like slowly graduating into a superhero. And the progression system was really cool. I remember really digging that. X-Men Origins Wolverine was on that console. The Uncaged edition with all the blood and the guts and everything. That was amazing. The only other memory I want to quickly get out of the way is Portal. So we had the orange box, right, with all those games, Team Fortress and all that, and had Portal. And I remember playing Portal with a friend. And again, it was one of those couch co-op experiences where one person drives and the other person kind of helps you solve the puzzles. And I was on the couch helping solve the puzzles. And it was such a fun bonding experience trying to figure out how to navigate all of the puzzles and the story. And we had such a good time with it that I remember later on for my friend's birthday, I actually made that Black Forest cake from the game and gave it to him. And he let me know that it was a triumph. So I thought that was cool. It was the fact that it inspired me to bake something. I think that's an interesting twist on a game for sure. So love the 360. Next to the PS2, it's probably one of my favorite consoles just because of how much I got out of it. So,
all right. Well, that brings us to the last generation we'll be covering.
Woo!
The PlayStation 4 / Xbox One / Wii U / Switch era.
/ Vita / 3DS. I added those.
Fair. I got nothing for Xbox or Wii U.
Okay. Let me run through those along with the mobiles real quick. We'll get them out of the way. So Vita, I really enjoyed the Vita. I got to play Dynasty Warriors Next on it. And the fact that I had like a 3D Dynasty Warriors experience on the go mobily was very cool. I had already beaten Persona 4 on PS2, but I got to play Persona 4 Golden, which is the definitive edition on Vita for the first time. That was a fantastic experience. The Vita really is a great little console, and it's almost like the Switch before the Switch was the Switch. But unfortunately, Sony didn't do as good a job as Nintendo did with really supporting the Vita. It was more of a side project for them, and you can kind of see that with the way it was marketed, which is sad. But a lot of the good stuff from Vita has been ported to Switch and other consoles. So if you don't have one, it's not necessarily the end of the world. But if you know, you know. Like the Vita was a great, great handheld console. 3DS, the only particular memory I have about the 3DS that I wanted to share was in regards to Bravely Default. It's one of my favorite RPGs. And it released exclusively on the 3DS. I don't know if it's ever been ported. I know that sequels have, obviously. But Bravely Default was interesting because it was one of those games that harkened back to classic RPGs, but with modern amenities. Like they allowed you to speed up combat. They allowed you to make adjustments to make combat and progression overall more smooth. It had a job system. Jobs could be combined. The Brave Default system was basically similar to Octopath Traveler almost, where you could brave by expending these points that you gain every turn in battle to make an attack more strong, or you could default by not attacking or defending and gaining more points to use later. And the ebb and flow of combat could change depending on if you use those points wisely or not in how the enemy acted, right? Mm-hmm. So it's very engaging, swift battle system. The narrative was cool because it was one of those pull the rug out from under you. Are you actually doing the right thing? The style games, and you could loop that game forever if you didn't get it. Like eventually you get it and you're like, oh, and then you have to make a completely wild decision that you think would end the game and it doesn't, and then it goes on into something else. I don't want to spoil it completely because no other game that I've ever played has done it quite like Bravely Default has. So people should check it out. Wii U. Breath of the Wild was the first time I played that was on the Wii U. In fact, I bought a Wii U specifically for Breath of the Wild because I couldn't get a hold of the Switch at the time. So I liked using the gamepad because obviously I think that originally the Sheikah Slate, I think is what they call it in the game, that was modeled after the Wii U pad. And you can tell by the way the puzzles are solved and the way that things were worked on it. And the fact that you had like a secondary map while you were playing the game, you didn't have to bring it up as a separate menu, was really cool. And there's a game that me and my friend played a lot on Wii U called NES Remix. And I think they have a version for the 3DS as well. Have you ever played NES Remix?
No. And it's like one of the few games that hasn't been ported to the Switch that I'm angry about because from what I've read of it, it sounds like so much fun.
You'd fucking love it, dude. So for those who don't know, they take all these classic NES games and they give you little challenges, kind of like a retro game challenge a little bit, but basically with real games. So, get a star in Mario, or like, get so many points, hit a hole in one in NES Golf. There's all these different challenges. And so my friend and I would controller pass back and forth trying to defeat these challenges. And I was amazed at like some of the games that he was really good at that I would never have gotten the challenge on. And then vice versa. He was like, I can't do this. And I'm like, let me try it. And I would nail it. And they rated you in a star system. You can get 1 to 3 stars, but if you really nailed the challenge, you got 3 stars, and then they all turned into rainbow like outlines. So whenever we got rainbow stars, I would just throw my hands in the air and go, rainbow stars! And my friend would like laugh and we'd have a really good time. But like, I was just so celebratory whenever we beat a challenge, because I was so happy that a game like this existed, and two, that we were able to still like beat these challenges, because retro NES games are hard, dude.
Yeah. And
some of the,
from what I saw, the roster that they put, like, they didn't just go for obvious things. They were pulling a balloon fight and wrecking
Kid Icarus. Yeah. No, you're right. There's a huge list, and they remix them too. They'll sometimes put characters from other games into different games, and they'll do weird Mario Maker shit with it. And so the enjoyment came from beating the challenges, from seeing what challenges they would create, and then from the wacky stuff they would do with the assets from the games. It was so fun. Such a good game. Such good memories. Rainbow stars for life. So that is my memory of the Wii U. And I also have no X-Bone memories. Sorry, X-Bone. I enjoyed playing Sunset Overdrive, but I mean, whatever. The Xbox One, I'm sorry. It wasn't for me.
That was, there's not a whole lot that could be said about that generation from Xbox.
Yeah, pretty much. So we got PS4 and we got Switch. Which one do you want to do?
Let's get Switch out of the way. I don't have a whole lot to say about Switch.
Okay.
Not out of animosity or anything like that. I was a very late adopter to Switch. I got a Switch January of last year.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
We're currently taping this in mid-December of 23. I got it in like January of 22. So I've only, I'm coming up on having it for 2 years.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, the game that prompted me to finally get it, I ended up not liking, which was Metroid Dread.
I didn't like it either. People hate me for it.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like some type of heretic for saying that as well. I know.
I feel so guilty.
I love Metroid. I just could not get into Metroid Dread.
I didn't jive with it either, man. I really didn't. It makes me sad. I really want to, and I want to go back and try it again, but I'm afraid that I'm just going to have the same experience. I didn't like it.
Yeah. It's not even a bad design or anything. It just didn't hit what I wanted it to.
Sometimes games don't hit, man.
Yeah.
They're good objectively. You can see they're designed well. You can see that they were competently put together, but for whatever reason, they do not click.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, Samus. We don't have chemistry, baby. Not in Dread.
Yeah.
I'm not to tell you. So
well, I can actually say, and I almost feel a little dirty with it, I liked Other M before more than I liked Dread.
Whoo! Oh, God.
And the hate mail flows.
Oh, let's just let that sit. Oh my God. Okay, what else?
So Mario Odyssey, fantastic Mario game.
That's my 3D Mario, which I hate because I know it's the most modern one, so it makes me sound like a Johnny come lately, but it's the one that clicked with me the most. I can't help that.
I can't hate on you for it. It is a beautifully designed Mario.
It's so wonderful.
The hat mechanic is
genius.
For as much as I love Mario Galaxy, the one criticism I would give it is that the power-ups don't give you the sense of what can I do with this. It's what should I do with this. Mario Odyssey, I feel, gets back to the what can I do with it. When you get to a world and you can throw that hat, take over an enemy, or you can get a new power-up of some kind, it's okay. What can I do with this now? How do I get up to that weird tower up there? How do I get across this expanse? That unlocks so many unique capabilities. So I can see why that's your 3D Mario. It is a fantastic game.
Yeah.
The remake of Link's Awakening, loved that. I'm a sucker for the old style of Zelda. So the remake of Link's Awakening was just delightful.
Did you get the Game and Watch, the Zelda Game and Watch?
No.
You should have. It's Link's Awakening is on there, obviously, with the other game, like your favorite Link 2 and then the original Legend of Zelda. It's a cute little thing just to have like the classic Link games like on the little Game and Watch. I got it right over here. I'm looking at it, but it's a novelty. It's not something I pick up all the time, but as a fan, I figured you might have picked it up. Yeah.
I must have missed it.
Oh, well, it's not as obscure as I thought. I occasionally still see it on sale. So look out for it, man. It might be something that you would dig. Seriously.
I'll have to do that. Those are probably the big games. Like everything else that I have on there is stuff that I jump in and out of. I have games that I need to try. Like I bought Darkwood. I bought Carrion. I bought Disco Elysium. I haven't started any of them yet.
Yeah.
I have the Castlevania collection. I play that from time to time. Pinball, what's it called? Pinball Heroes Zombie Eater, something like that. I can't.
Okay.
But it's an action RPG played with a pinball mechanic.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a game called Yoku's Island, I think, that is kind of like that. Like it's a dung beetle that moves around via pinball mechanics, but he's moving around this island doing like missions and stuff. Kind of Metroid-esque because you unlock areas as you advance the story or whatever, but it's pretty cool. So.
Yeah. The only other game that I'd say that it sparks memories in a different way, and it's something that if you're old school like us, it's worth getting, even though you can emulate 80% of the games on there, and that's the Atari 50th Anniversary Collection.
Mm.
That is not just a collection. That is a digital museum. There are video interviews and design documents, advertisements, one sheets, TV commercials. You can literally trace this. It brings the history of Atari back before they were even Atari, when they were Syzygy. It's like a name with like 3 Y's and 2 Z's. I can't remember how to pronounce it. But it traces the history all the way back. You see every major arcade game they released before the 2600. All of the consoles. They don't shy away from the Activision split or the utter failure that was the Lynx and the 5200 and the Jaguar and the 7800. Frankly, everything but the 2600.
Wow.
But there are games from everything: arcade, 26, 52, 78, Lynx, Jaguar, and the Atari computers.
That's cool.
And they just I discovered this. I didn't even know they were doing it. Just a couple days ago, they announced released a holiday update with 12 new games, some of them homebrew. So they're even embracing homebrew and modern remakes. So like there's a homebrew sequel to Adventure. Adventure 2 was made mid 2000s, and they're going to do a couple more raw releases. So if you've ever wanted to play obscure Atari games, it's a great way to play like Tempest 2000 from the Jaguar.
Mm-hmm.
That alone is practically worth the price of admission. But at this point there's over 60 games on there. It's for old school gamers. It is just manna from heaven, celebrating Atari in a wonderful way.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a retro collection done right. I love it when they have all the extras, like the arcade versions, the interviews, like all the different pieces of history and stuff. So you can kind of really not just play the games, but go back and appreciate, the time. That's neat. I like that. I like that a lot. Cool. Is that it for Switch or?
Yep, I'd say that's it for me for Switch.
Okay. I adopted Switch in 2017, so I have a pretty healthy history with it. Super Mario Odyssey is not only my favorite 3D Mario game, but I have memories of it tied with my first son because that was like the first game that he really got into, and then he just loved Mario. Loved Mario. And then around that time, Smash Brothers Ultimate was about to come out, so I was watching a lot of trailers, and he learned the names of like all the characters. So imagine this little like 18-month-year-old like standing in front of the TV in his diaper going, Sheik, Soda, Link, Marth, like just yelling them all out. And then like I got amiibos and he's obsessed with playing with those. So I got him his own amiibos and like it was just a kind of bonding thing for us. Really, really sweet. And I remember sometimes he'd watch me play games. When he watched me play Breath of the Wild, and I did Link's kind of like when you hold the sword attack button and he does like the 360 swoosh. Mm-hmm. That made him laugh for some reason. He thought that was the funniest thing he'd ever seen.
Yeah, dude, little kids.
Yeah, right? You never know what's going to make a baby laugh.
Yeah.
So I love memories of just a little baby laugh while I was playing games. And Smash Brothers Ultimate. The two of us following that all the way up until its release, and then just the celebration of games that Ultimate is, and the fact there was not one but 2 DLC packs with all those different characters, and like all these characters getting their own amiibos like Sephiroth and Sora and Kazuya. Like that's so cool. I just couldn't believe it. You know, like the licenses they were able to achieve. It really is a celebration of gaming in regards to the way that they were able to pull in all these different publishers to work with them and get all those characters into one fighting game. You know what I mean? It gives like, you know, homebrews and knockoffs like Mupin like a run for their money because they really went there. It was amazing.
I don't know how Voy will ever top it.
Yeah. I don't think they will. I think Ultimate's going to have to stay on its own, and they're going to have to innovate a bit if they want to do another one, which is probably why it's been so long. Because they can. I mean, again, they're continuing to start new IPs. There's definitely rosters of characters that they haven't dipped into that they own that they could. So there is more game to be had, but the odds of them doing what they did again are pretty low. Maybe one day they will. I don't know if it'll be Sakurai at the helm though. That man is a maniac and damn near killed himself to get us the game that we got. So God bless that man. Seriously.
The only way that I could see without innovating, if they were to just continue the formula forward but top that, the only way I could see them pulling that off is if they went full Roger Rabbit and it wasn't just the best of Nintendo and third parties, they somehow looped in Sony and Microsoft. And we're like, okay, let's bring in Nathan Drake. Let's bring in Master Chief. That's the only way that they could continue just on this straight line.
Microsoft would be down. Sony would not.
Oh, yeah, no. So Sony would be like, yeah, that's cute. Go away.
Yeah,
now.
Sony sucks. Like, as much as I love them, they don't play well with others. Mm-mm. So it is what it is. Speaking of indie games, Supergiant made a lot of really decent games. Bastion I first played on 360, but the most recent one they made, Hades, is fantastic. And the thing I love most about Hades is it's a roguelike that incorporates the roguelike structure into its story in such an organic way that it really feels like you're advancing a narrative even when you're dying and starting over and doing repeated runs over and over again. Like you're always heavily advancing your narrative as well as your overall efficacy in battles, which is something roguelikes can do, but the story usually always takes a backseat in order to make it make sense, right? And in this case, they really did a good job integrating that. So fantastic music. Darren Korb does the music, I think, for all of Supergiant's games, and every single soundtrack they have, Bastion, Transistor, Hades, like they're bangers through and through from start to finish. I've never like seen such a consistency out of a single composer. Like it's maybe Nobuo Uematsu, but even then, like there's bodies of work of his that I like, and there's ones that I don't. But with Darren Korb, it's just every single one hits. So shout out to him. Pokemon Legends Arceus came out on Switch, and it was the Pokemon game I had dreamed about since 1998. Like being able to like be out in the field and physically chuck your Pokeball at a Pokemon in the open world. You know what I mean? Like thunk them on the head with it and watch them go inside or whatever. Like being able to freely run around during battles being a little bit more streamlined. A lot of the extra bullshit, like hidden individual and effort values being either removed or streamlined, the natures, all of that just felt more simple and fun rather than like meta and made to be like competitive in real life, which a lot of people like that aspect of Pokemon, and I respect it, but it's so time consuming and it's so competitive already that for me, the other stuff is more enjoyable. The exploration, the discovery, the stuff that Arceus really focused on. So I love it for that. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Kirby single-handedly, I think, got my first son into video games in a major way. It encouraged him to read. It encouraged him to learn how to play in a 3D space. He's super into the fandom. Like, Kirby's his favorite thing ever and has been for a number of years since that game came out. So I have a soft spot in my heart for Kirby, specifically for how it really encouraged and got my son into video gaming. Fire Emblem Three Houses, to me, remains the best story Fire Emblem has ever had. And all of the characters, like, I usually don't like JRPGs with a lot of different characters because the characters get so tropey. Like, this is the beefcake, and this is the weirdo recluse, and this is the dark edgelord, and this is, like, and they have those characters. They have all the archetypes. They're all represented, but they're deeper. They have more to say. There's more of an exploration of why they are the way that they are. They're more than just two-dimensional, if that makes sense. And you get the chance to really get to know them over the course of the game because they have this persona-like structure where in between battles, you're at an academy and you're a teacher there, and you can interact and deepen your relationships with all of them and do different activities. So there's a good gameplay loop of doing the battles, but also bonding with and doing extra activities with your soldiers so that you feel it more if they perish. You know what I mean? You feel it more if they're in danger. And your bonds pay fruitful dividends in battle, kind of like Persona. Like, if you have a stronger bond with somebody, then the attacks are going to be stronger when you guys are side by side. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, good stuff. Ys 8 is the first Ys game I ever played, and I think it originally launched on Vita. And it is a great action RPG, and I got it as a gift from my best friend because Full Metal Merc, co-host with the co-most, he got a PS Classic and I hacked it for him for free. I was like, oh man, I already hacked mine. I can do yours. It'd be easy. And as a thank you, he gave me a $60 Switch game. And I was like, dude, thanks.
Nice.
And I think he just really wanted me to get into it because he was into it. And sometimes it doesn't always work. And I remember when I booted Ys 8 up and I started playing it, I was like, oh, this is like JRPG trash. Like, I didn't like it. The story, like, the characters seemed dull and tropey. But you're on this ship, but then once the shipwreck happens, like in the first 20 minutes of the game, and you get stranded on this island and the game kicks off proper and the music starts going and you're fighting, I'm like, whoa, this is good. So I've been like a fan of Ys ever since. I don't think any Ys game I've played has been as good as Ys 8. Ys Origins comes close, but the fact that, I got it as a gift from a friend and he really wanted me to get into it, and I did. I thought that was kind of cool. So, a lot of Warriors games on the Switch. And again, Dynasty Warriors 2, love it. They combined it with Zelda, Hyrule Warriors. They combined it with Fire Emblem Warriors. They combined it with Persona 5 Strikers. And the cool thing that they launched from Persona on is Persona 5 Strikers is a sequel, essentially, to Persona 5, because it takes place in the events after Persona 5, but different gameplay style, right? Which I love. Because it felt like a Persona game, just that, the combat played out differently. Hyrule Warriors sequel, Age of Calamity, felt like a what-if prequel to the original Breath of the Wild. So you got this cool, like, well, what if you were able to stop Ganon from destroying everything in the 100 years, prior to the game starting? Mm-hmm. Here's how that might look. That's amazing. Fire Emblem Warriors, the sequel to that, was literally Three Houses, but again, a what if scenario if Three Houses took a different turn from the shift that it does in the original game. Very cool. And you get to revisit all those characters again. So the thing they're doing with Warriors games nowadays, especially in the Nintendo properties, where they're incorporating them to the more successful stories of the franchises, because that's always been the weakest thing about Warriors and Musou games is the story, especially when they adopt other franchises. The original Fire Emblem Warriors and the original Hyrule Warriors, they do this like kind of like isekai, everybody gets warped to the same dimension. So you have all these characters from all these different games, but the story is so weak and everybody interacts in such a shallow way. It's really lame. It's all about the gameplay. But in these newer ones, the story is just as powerful and awesome and engaging as the original game it's inspired by. And I love that. I love that so much. I wrote down Golf Story and Octopath Traveler. Good games. Check them out. But I've talked enough. The Switch is awesome. I love it. There you go. We're an hour and a half in. Let's put this bitch to bed with the PS4. Woo!
Yes. All right. The last one.
Yes.
All right. We've mentioned God of War a few times, and we haven't said much about it other than, duh, it's God of War.
Yeah, it's good.
This is the one system where I have to actually stop and actually say something about God of War. When I spoke earlier about Metal Gear Solid 3, I said it was the first game that ever made me cry.
Yeah.
God of War 2018 is the second game.
Mm.
The themes of fatherhood, of the generation gap, of mourning and not knowing how to get past that, how Atreus mourns versus how Kratos mourns.
Yeah.
Those themes are just so well told in this game. This is the game where Kratos, I've always pushed back against the Kratos as a one-dimensional character. He has a backstory. It's just he doesn't show anything, he has depth to his character. He just doesn't show it in the original series because it's all about him being angry about what happened to him.
Yeah, the original series kind of took an exploitative turn. Like it definitely leaned heavier into the angst at the sacrifice of the character.
Yeah.
Where he'd do shit like he would burn a woman alive if it meant solving a puzzle,
right.
Which is fucked up, especially considering he's supposed to be so sad about killing his own family that he wants to kill himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't line up. So I get it. I get the criticism.
Yeah, I get the criticism. I think there's more. I think the criticism also tends to go, oh, he was one-dimensional. No, he wasn't one-dimensional. It's just they didn't really have him reckon with what he was doing and, connect with the emotions that he was having. This is the game where that all happens. This is the game where everything that he's done, everything he has lived through has all come back to haunt him. And it's why he is the father that he is and why the relationship between him and Atreus is fractured. And just the themes in that game and the way that they explore it is just so touching. It's so well written. And it's just, besides that, an amazing game to play. The gameplay is impeccable. I'm not a graphics whore by any means, but the visuals in that game are stunning. The music, everything about that game, it is a 10 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned.
I agree. I 100% completely agree. It was kind of a Resident Evil 4 turn too, because you took this franchise that was not played out, but it had a formula. You completely reinvent how it's played and not only nail it, but nail it in the same way as when it debuted. You create this gameplay loop in this world that hits just as hard, but is completely different, right? Amazing turn and storytelling from Cory Barlog. I enjoyed the story of the first God of War way more than the second and the third. I thought the second was even more exploitative, and I think that's where kind of things kind of took a turn. But Cory Barlog directed the second game. And to see his maturity and advancement as a storyteller from God of War 2 on the PS2 up to God of War PS4 is nothing short of incredible.
Yeah.
And I think I owe a lot of that probably to him just, maturing and aging as a man, him having his own family and being able to kind of effectively pour those emotions and lessons and that piece of his life into this game. And you feel it. It feels very genuine and very real. And as I don't think you can appreciate it if you're not a father. I think you totally can. Any adult that has ever mentored or cared for a child can feel the sincerity in this game in regards to the relationship between Kratos and Atreyu. And it stuck to my ribs. And it's one of those games that I got really emotional about and thought about for a very long time after I finished it, just like Last of Us Part 2, just like the Final Fantasy VII remake. But in particular, specifically as what it feels like to be a dad. You know what I mean? Like it was really good.
Absolutely. Spider-Man, another game beautiful, fun story, fun gameplay, but web swinging. Oh my God. Like my older boys are multi-gamer or multiplayer gamers. They love COD, they love Fortnite, they love all sorts of things like that.
Mhm.
But for some reason, the only single player games that either of them play and have beaten are the Spider-Man games. And when they were like, can I borrow your Spider-Man game? I'm like, yeah, sure. And they're like, well, what's the gameplay like? And I described it to them. I said, if nothing else, you will never fast travel in this game. You will swing through the city every single time.
Yeah.
And after they played it, they went, oh yeah, no, why would we use the subway? Swinging is just so much fun.
Yeah. I didn't think it would get better than Spider-Man 2 on the original 6th gen, like based on the movie, because that was really good. But yeah, they nailed it. They really did.
Yeah.
Especially from Miles Morales and the recent sequel, like that even more so. Like the power of the PS5. One of the things I didn't like, do you remember in Saints Row 3 where you could fly a jet?
Mm-hmm.
But and even in Grand Theft Auto 5, like whenever you fly a jet, you don't go as fast as you feel like you should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's because they can't really render things that fast in the game. We didn't have the technology. Now I think we do, because Spider-Man goes so fucking fast. In Spider-Man 2 and in Miles Morales, like you just zip across the city. And I feel like we finally have the rendering power to keep the graphics up when you move that fast through an open world environment. And that is so cool.
Yep.
I think that really adds to the momentum and the feeling for sure.
So other games, Hades, you mentioned it for the Switch. Hades was a game that I resisted playing for a while because I'd heard so much hype about it, and was one of those where the hype started to turn me against it. I'm like,
yeah,
this
totally
game is never going to be all that good. It's just
can't be that good.
It's a bunch of hipsters just, puffing up an indie game. How could it possibly be any good? And I play, and I'm like, it went on sale for like half off. I'm like, okay, fuck it. You know what? I'll pay whatever it was, $15 or whatever. Oh my God.
Yeah, dude.
So like everything that you said, I got to credit to the voice acting in that game. Everyone has such a unique personality, and the sense of humor that comes across in the dialogue, whether it's hate, whether it's, why am I blanking on the main character's name all of a sudden?
Oh, it starts with a Z.
Zagreus.
Thank you. Yeah, he's Hades' son. Yeah.
So Zagreus, the conversations that he has with his dad, or the conversations he has with Thanatos, or
the little Medusa head character. What's her name?
Dusa.
She's so cute.
Yes.
She's so nervous around him. It's like adorable.
It's so cute. The flirtation that he has with Megara is absolutely hilarious. Even talking to Sisyphus, and Sisyphus just being like, yeah, no, I'm perfectly fine here stuck in this room, pushing this boulder up this hill. Why would I want to be free?
Yeah.
Meet Boldy. He's my friend.
It's good stuff.
It's such everything that you said about it, I echo it. It is worth the hype. Res Infinite, I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
Mutant League Football, the rebirth of that is absolutely fun to play. The commentary on it is absolutely bizarre and beyond. It's worth it just to listen to the commentary. Artistic games like Flower and Journey and Abzu, where they're just chill games. Oh my God, the first time I played Journey I was like, this is antithetical to everything that I've ever played. This is the opposite of a video game, and yet it is beautiful. And
it's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Darkest Dungeon, Streets of Rage 4, wonderful rebirth for Streets of Rage. Fucking love that. I play that game probably once a week. I've beaten it 6 ways to Sunday, and I still play it.
Call me up, man. I'll play it with you. That's a fun game.
It is so addictive.
Yeah.
And just a goofy one, the AVGN game.
I never got a chance to actually play that. Is it pretty good?
Oh my God. It is so fucking incredible. I mean, there is a certain bar of a certain threshold of entry in that you have to like the Angry Video Game Nerd, because a lot of the humor in the game and a lot of the components of the game are from the AVGN series. But even beyond that, it is such an impeccably designed, platform shooter game.
Mm-hmm.
It is the kind of game where, yes, it's difficult, but the difficulty is never unfair. There is never a moment where you die and it's the computer's fault. It is always, you have not figured out the timing. You have not figured out the escape pattern. You have not figured out the way to do it. It's on you. And when you finally beat that level, when you finally get past that one point, it feels so rewarding to do it. It is such... I had no expectation going in that a licensed game from a YouTuber was going to be anything good, and it shocked me how precise it is. Just as much as like Shovel Knight, that would be a perfect comparison. It is in the same vein as Shovel Knight, as it was made by people who grew up like we did, playing games like Mega Man and Ninja Gaiden and Castlevania, and they know what makes those games tick, but they also know the problems of those games, and they have addressed those in the design of modern games and said, here's an 8-bit style platformer, but done perfectly.
I love it when I get a hold of a game like that. Cyber Shadow is like that. I like that game a lot. Have you played that one?
That one out. No, I have not.
I don't know if it was a Yacht Club game too, or if they just produced it. But Cyber Shadow reminded me a lot of Ninja Gaiden, but it wasn't like as unfair difficulty. You know what I mean? Like they ramped up the difficulty, but it felt, so good stuff. Wow. I talked about Until Dawn, I think, it being like the ultimate horror game. Ghost of Tsushima. Every time I go back, I forget, like, you know how sometimes you go back to a game, you're like, damn, this game is good. Wow. Like you remember it being good, but you don't remember it being like good. And then you play it and you're like, ooh, the music and the way that kind of like the game hits and, the gameplay. Ghost of Tsushima is one of those games, kind of like the original Horizon, Zero Dawn, where you can, it wears its influences on its sleeve. You can clearly see the Ubisoft open world influence. You can see the stealth mission structure, the combat, but not only does it nail those elements that it liberally borrows, but it puts its own unique spin on it to where it feels like nothing else, and it feels good. It's so competent. Ghost of Tsushima and the recent DLC are amazing. I had a lot of fun playing the multiplayer. The guys over at Call It Like I Don't See It and me and Derek, we all got together and did the 4-player multiplayer for, several nights and had a blast. So I have a lot of good memories associated with that. Red Dead Redemption 2, we talk about stories and gaming. Holy shit, dude. I need to go back and play that. I've only played it once, and it's one of those games that you just need to go back and play a game and you just haven't yet. And it always just is there in the back of your mind. Every time I hear the word, I'm like, why haven't I gone back and play that yet? I really need to. Last of Us Part 2, very emotional, very good. Elden Ring. I forgot about Elden Ring. I think I actually played it on the PS5, but it did come out on the PS4. So I think that counts.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
We'll allow it.
Yeah, sure. Elden Ring. I really appreciate, I'm grateful for Elden Ring because ever since the first Demon Souls came out, I've wanted to like those games. I didn't have a PS3 when Demon Souls first came out, but I did have a 360 when Dark Souls came out. And I got it because I was like, yes, I love the art style. I love the vibe. I love what this game's trying to do. And that game just beat me down so much. Like I got through a fair portion of it, but I never finished it because it was just so hard and I couldn't find my rhythm with it, And then I tried playing Bloodborne and it beat me down even quicker. And I was like, oh, okay. And I tried playing Sekiro and it beat me down even quicker. And I want to love those style of games, those From Software games so bad. For some reason, I can never really jive with it. And then along comes Elden Ring, and Derek gracefully lets me borrow it because he gets it through he's a reseller. So he just had it in his inventory and he's like, hey, if you want to check this out, I'm like, yeah, I am curious. I probably won't like it. And for whatever reason, if it's because of the open world or because of all the different options you have or how excited the community was about the game and all the tips that were out there and the different styles of gameplay I could adopt, it finally clicked. And I not only played and enjoyed it, I beat it several times. and then started to make like different style of characters. Like I made a Guts character from Berserk and I was playing like as him. I was cosplaying as different characters. I tried to do like a sorcerer character and not only got into it, but got super into it. So I'm really, really grateful to Elden Ring for finally getting me to click with the Soulsborne genre. And it's making me want to go back and try the other games again with that kind of newfound understanding of the rhythm a little bit, even though I know those are probably still going to be just as hard. So, the Resident Evil remakes recently were great. Shadow of Mordor, that whole Nemesis system is amazing. And that pretty much sold the PS4 to me, was the Shadow of Mordor. Like, I was like, I got to get a PS4 now.
I forgot about those. Those are great games. And the Nemesis system is
fantastic.
I wish it wasn't trademarked to WB or whoever it was that has it, because that should be something that every game could use.
For sure. No, it's such a good system. Dragon Quest XI is, to my mind, probably the greatest Dragon Quest game that has come out so far, which again, it's the most modern one. So I feel a little scummy saying that, but like to me, it just really kind of nailed the formula of Dragon Quest and included everything I love about it from all the past games. Resident Evil Village, really, really good, really goofy. Remind me a lot of Resident Evil 4. I wrote down Berserk and the Band of the Hawk. That's another Warriors game where they adopted the Berserk anime story. And the Berserk is actually my favorite anime. And it's weird because it's really dark and depressing and kind of rough. Have you read the manga or seen the anime?
I have not.
The main character Guts goes through a lot. And I think the reason why I identify him is not because I enjoy watching him suffer or I enjoy like the darkness of the story, but the way that he wrestles with his trauma and grows from it, you know, not always in the best of ways, but his arc, just like life, kind of is messy and goes, you know, the right way and the wrong way. I just can relate to it a bit, I guess. And I really, really enjoy, kind of some of the reflections the manga takes on the things that he's gone through and like the journey that he goes through. So being able to play a Musou game based on the Golden Age arc and then on past that to like pretty much the end of the manga at the time was like a dream. I remember I got the game and I was just like, and I was like, you know, I got like a Guts tattoo, if you can see it. Like that's how much I love
cool.
like the anime. And I was like super geeked about it. And it's rare. Not a lot of people bought it. So now it's like worth a lot of money, which is cool, I guess. So grateful that sometimes my fandom accidentally nets me into like rare, expensive, cool things. So I guess it's kind of the nature of being a gamer sometimes. So 2 hours.
Yeah.
Woo.
This has been a marathon, but we've made it. Yes.
We made it. Guys, thank you for going on this journey with us. 3 episodes, 4 hours of us just gushing about the things that we love and are grateful for to be gamers. I hope some of it was enjoyable and inspiring to y'all. And we'd love, again, to hear from you, your different stories that we can tell throughout the year. Because that's one of my favorite things about gaming is just how it affects me and how I get to experience stories that I would never experience any other way otherwise. You know, just super grateful.
And the community.
Yes.
For being able to meet you, being able to meet I'm friends with the cast of the Super Turbo. Oh shit! Now I'm gonna fuck up their podcast name.
Well, also I'd give that 10 minutes.
That one too. Yes.
Yeah.
Lycia Finley and Stephen White. Hi. Hope you're listening. Sorry if I messed up the name of your podcast. My brain is, I haven't had caffeine today. But there's so many people that I've met through whether it's through podcasting or just gaming in general, that just, when the sense of community is there, it's not like movie Twitter. It's not like music, that there's a shared experience because you're actively experiencing it, not passively experiencing it. I think that might be the thing that I'm just most grateful for, is the sense of community that gaming can provide.
Exactly. Most definitely. All right. Well, I think with that, we can go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for coming out and listening to us again. If you want to follow us or contact us, you know where to find it. Look in those show notes for the link tree. Rate us where you can. I think we have enough episodes where we could be effectively rated on Spotify, hopefully.
I would assume so, yeah. And we're on just about every other major podcast platform: Amazon, Apple, Radio Public, whatever the hell that is. They're all. If you go to the Spotify page, there's links for all like 8 platforms that we're on. So
yeah. So definitely check us out, share us around, rate us. All that stuff helps us out, helps us grow, helps us find our audience.
Yep.
And we'll I guess we'll see you next week, or not next week. We'll see you whenever, because we're not scheduled, baby. Woo!
Yeah. And next episode, in keeping with the theme, remember, we haven't said this publicly, but we've talked about this off the air. We're doing one more timed episode, holiday games.
That's right. So you're down to do that. I know you're kind of iffy. You weren't sure. Okay. Okay, good.
A couple of the entries might be a little stretching the theme a bit.
Whatever. Let's do it.
We're doing it. So next episode, holiday games.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the best holiday games. Let's go.
Just imagine what that can bring. I can hear people's wheels turning going, there's fucking holiday games?
Good ones? Ones we should play? What? You'll find out next time. All right, guys. You take care.
Yep. Until next time.